All right, let's begin. In this deep dive, we're going to break down a company that is quite literally re-engineering the physical world from the atom up. We're talking about Kanadevia, a 143-year-old shipbuilder, and we're going to explore exactly how they solved one of the single biggest problems in modern physics and what the solution means for the future of energy, computing, and even our expansion into space.
So, it all kicks off with a paradox, one that seems almost unbelievable when you first hear it. How on earth does a legacy industrial giant, a company famous for building massive 300-meter-long tankers, suddenly pivot to master the subatomic world of battery technology? You know, how did an old-world company solve a problem that has left the best and brightest in Silicon Valley stumped for decades? Well, the answer isn't in chemistry. It's in pure, brute force mechanical engineering.
To really understand Kanadevia's strategy, we have to start with the science. We need to shrink ourselves down, way down, to the molecular level, right to the edge of the one physical barrier that has held back the solid-state battery revolution for years. Because it's right here, in the physics of immense pressure, that we find the company's real, uncopyable competitive advantage.
Okay, so the core technical hurdle is a concept called interfacial impedance. Now, in a normal liquid battery, like the one in your phone, the liquid electrolyte just flows everywhere. It makes perfect, seamless contact with the electrode. It's easy. But in a solid-state battery, you're trying to press two solid materials together so perfectly, so flawlessly, that ions can flow between them with virtually zero resistance. Any microscopic gap, any tiny imperfection, and the whole battery's performance just collapses. For decades, this has been the holy grail, the insurmountable wall of solid-state physics.
And this really gets to the heart of the trade-off. See, everybody wants solid electrolytes. They're stable, they don't leak, they don't catch fire, and they pack way more power into the same space. That's higher energy density. But they have a fatal flaw. They crack. As the battery charges and discharges, ions move back and forth, and the solid material actually expands and contracts. This leads to tiny microfractures that completely destroy the battery. So the engineering challenge was really twofold. First, create a perfect, seamless connection, and then make sure that connection could survive unbelievable physical stress over and over again.
So how did a shipbuilder solve this? Well, they didn't see it as a chemistry problem at all. They saw it as a mechanical engineering problem. This is Kanadevia's cold pressing technique, and to understand it, you have to look at their history. For over a century, as Hitachi Zosen, they mastered the art of welding massive steel plates to survive the crushing force of the deep ocean. They figured out how to forge huge diesel engines that could contain thousands of controlled explosions every single minute. They became absolute masters of pressure, hermetic integrity, and metallurgy in the most brutal environment on this planet. And they took all that knowledge and applied it at the micron scale. Just think about that for a second. The very same principles they used to hold together a 100,000-ton vessel are now being used to fuse particles that are literally invisible to the naked eye. They use this proprietary machinery to apply immense, perfectly uniform pressure in a perfect vacuum. They're essentially forging the battery components together at an atomic level. This is not something a chemist in a lab coat can just replicate. This is a manufacturing moat built from a century of heavy industry.
And they solved the cracking problem by, again, thinking like shipbuilders. They used the same kind of stress-strain analysis they'd use on a massive ship hull being battered by a typhoon, and their engineers developed what they call a mechanical buffer layer. It's this flexible layer inside the battery that acts like a molecular shock absorber. It allows the solid materials to expand and contract, to basically breathe, without cracking or losing their conductivity. It turns a brittle piece of ceramic into a durable, industrial-grade component.
So the fundamental insight here, the big pivot, was this abstraction of their core competency. Kanadevia realized they weren't just shipbuilders anymore. They were masters of the sealed environment. Masters of creating and maintaining perfect seals under the most extreme pressure imaginable. This is the key that unlocks everything that follows. But as an analyst, you have to ask, so what? Why does any of this matter to a CFO or to a four-star general?
And this is where the so what really begins. We're moving from the physics lab to the factory floor to see how this one piece of technology creates a stealth monopoly inside the most critical and most expensive manufacturing equipment on the face of the Earth.
We're talking about EUV lithography machines. You know, the half-billion-dollar monsters built by companies like ASML that are absolutely essential for making the world's most advanced AI chips. Inside these machines is a truly hostile frontier, a high vacuum environment that's heated to over 100 degrees Celsius. Now, if you put a normal liquid battery in there, it would be a complete catastrophe. It would outgas, it would literally leak volatile fumes, which would instantly contaminate the priceless optics and grind the entire global supply of advanced semiconductors to a halt. Kanedevia's solid-state battery is the only power source on the planet stable enough to operate in this environment. Period.
Let's just put this in financial terms to make it crystal clear. A single one of these machines costs $500 million. This isn't just another piece of equipment, it's a strategic national asset. The entire infrastructure of our digital age is built on the output of these machines.
And what happens if one of those machines goes down? Well, a semiconductor fab loses $1 million every single hour. So when the stakes are that high, the reliability of every last component becomes absolutely paramount. And the price of that component, it becomes almost irrelevant.
And this is how you have to start thinking about this company. In this specific market, Kanadevia isn't selling a battery. They are selling uptime. They're a yield protection utility. They are selling insurance against million-dollar-an-hour failures. When your product is the only one in the world that prevents a $500 million machine from stopping, you have near total price inelasticity. You get to name your price.
Okay, so they have a monopoly inside a machine. But how does this technology actually scale? Now we're going to broaden the scope from a single factory to the next great economic frontier, space, and the huge ambitions of the Artemis Accords.
The single greatest challenge for having a permanent human presence on the moon is surviving the lunar night. It lasts for 14 Earth days, and the temperatures just plummet to minus 170 degrees Celsius. Conventional batteries would freeze solid in minutes. So to stop this, they need heaters, which create this crippling energy tax. They literally burn up to 30% of their own stored power just to keep themselves alive. Kanadevia's battery, on the other hand, requires zero heating. It operates flawlessly in the extreme cold, which means no energy tax and no need for heavy heating units or shielding.
And this technical advantage translates directly into immense economic value. When you eliminate the heaters and all their heavy shielding, you free up a huge amount of critical mass and volume. For a lunar rover or a lander, this means you can carry 40% more scientific instruments, 40% more payload. In the space logistics business, where every single gram costs thousands of dollars just to launch, this isn't just an incremental improvement, it's a force multiplier. It fundamentally changes the economics of the entire space industry.
So the ultimate implication here is this. If your rover, your habitat, or your mining equipment cannot survive the lunar night without a Kanadevia battery, then the company isn't just selling you a component. They effectively control the foundational infrastructure layer. They own the power grid. They become the physical operating system for the entire lunar economy.
So we've seen the technological dominance, it's clear, but the technology alone isn't enough. We have to look at the absolutely radical corporate strategy that was required to unlock all this value. A strategy I like to call strategic nihilism.
To understand the rebrand to Kanadevia, you first have to understand the history. They were founded as Hitachi Zosen, and the company spent more than a century trapped in what you'd call the low-margin steel business, a respected but deeply undervalued industrial giant suffering from what investors call a conglomerate discount. The rebrand in October 2024 was a calculated, surgical strike on its own identity. It was a clear signal to the market of a definitive pivot towards a high-margin IP licensing model.
And this table here, it just lays out the financial logic perfectly. The old Hitachi Zosen model was incredibly capital-intensive, stuck with a low price-to-earnings ratio that's typical of old-school sunset industries. The new Kanadevia model is asset-light. See, they don't plan to build every single battery themselves. Their strategy is to license the core patents for their cold pressing technology to gigafactories all over the world. They're shifting from selling physical ship holes to collecting royalties on an entire technological era, and they're targeting a valuation much more like a semiconductor giant like ASML.
We call this strategic nihilism. It's the brutal but necessary act of killing a 143-year-old name. It's about telling the market, telling your board, and telling your own employees that your prestigious past is now a liability. It's a kill-your-father mentality, destroying the legacy brand to force investors to completely reevaluate the company based not on what it was, but on what it is about to become.
Okay, now we move to the final and widest aperture of our analysis. We've gone from the subatomic to the corporate. Now we zoom all the way out to the geopolitical chessboard and analyze this battery's role as a sovereign, strategic asset.
The strategic implications here are really profound. First, the chemistry is completely cobalt-free. It uses sulfur, which is an abundant byproduct of oil refining in places like the US and Japan. This immediately decouples it from the Chinese-dominated cobalt supply chain, completely neutralizing the threat of mineral blackmail. Second, its stability is so high that it's aiming for a non-hazardous shipping classification. This would allow it to be air freighted anywhere in the world without restriction, a logistical game-changer for military and disaster relief operations. And finally, because it's non-explosive, it is inherently defense-grade. It's perfect for next-generation autonomous undersea vehicles and high-altitude drones.
So, the ultimate takeaway is this. There is a grand strategic divergence happening right now. While the West, and especially Silicon Valley, has been obsessed with the digital layer, software, AI, the cloud, Japan, through Kanadevia, is quietly securing physical layer sovereignty. They are building the indispensable, irreplaceable hardware on which the entire digital future will have to run.
And that leaves us with a final provocative question to think about. In this new era, where we face hostile environments, not just here on Earth, but in space and cyberspace, who truly holds the levers of power? Is it the one who writes the software? Or is it the one who forges the physical, indestructible container that holds the energy, that survives the vacuum, and that allows that software to function in the first place?